You love tier maker lists. I love tier maker lists. Let's do a tier maker list. So as you can see, I'm doing a tier maker list of Dream Theater studio albums. I recently did one of Dream Theater's live records, and I got a lot of positive feedback on that one, so hey. So, as you can see, I've got these sorted into bad, mid, good, their best. Now, bad doesn't necessarily mean I think these are bad albums. I think they're bad Dream Theater records, but let's be realistic here. This is like a little bit of a pre-game disclaimer that Dream Theater is my all-time favorite band, and even at their absolute worst, I would still rather listen to the lowest ranked album on this list than just about anything else from most bands in existence. So, yeah. Bad is a bit of a subjective term here. The other thing is that this is a tier maker list, but it's also a ranking. So normally what you would do is you would do things in chronological order, and that's how you would build these lists. But I'm going to do them in ranking order, so that when you're done, you could look at like on the axis that goes like that way, the horizontal axis is actually going to be ranked by the ranking of the album rather than chronological order. So I'm actually going to be building this list from the bad section up to their best. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's go. So, when it comes to Dream Theater's worst album, I think most of us can agree that there's really only one answer to that question. And unfortunately, it is The Astonishing. The Astonishing is an album that frustrates the hell out of me because I see what they're trying to do here. I see you, Dream Theater. I see what you're trying to do. You are trying to make an Arion record. But you're not Arion. You're not Arjen Lucassen. And you only have one singer. Admittedly, this is one of James's best performances. Like, not just in recent years, of all time. His voice perfectly complements the music on this record. And if there's one element that I can honestly say The Astonishing is great for, it is James LaBrie. I think this is his showpiece in Dream Theater. Never mind the early records before his vocal injury, this album is his showpiece in Dream Theater. And there are some good songs on it. I mean, The Gift of Music, Dystopian Overture, A New Beginning, Moment of Betrayal, even Our New World, although I prefer the single version with Lizzie Hale. I wish that they did that with the original version of the song instead of editing out half the solos, but man, that duality between LaBrie and Lizzie is just, Alright, so next we have to go with, and I'm gonna admit here, the lower half of this list is gonna be heavy on Mangini era stuff. I have to go with the self-titled record. Now, the self-titled record, I don't think it's a bad album. I don't think it's like an album that I'm like, ugh, why did they make that? But it is an album that I don't really have any particularly strong feelings for. I think the instrumentals, False Awakening, Sweet, and Enigma Machine are good. I mean, they're not Erotomania or Itzy Jam level, but they're good. They're perfectly fine. I think the single, The Enemy Inside, is maybe, I hate using this word, but it's a little cringe. You know, it kind of makes me think a little too much like pro-military Five Finger Death Punch. I mean, not that I'm not pro-military, but, or pro-veterans, but like, do you have to like come out and say it? Anyway. And then, you know, the ending epic, Illumination Theory, I'd rank it low. Maybe the lowest of their maybe the lowest of their big epics. I mean, a Dream Theater epic is still an epic, but it is the lowest ranking epic. Okay, so this one I'm kind of on the fence about how low I put it because I don't know how I quite feel about this record yet. It's the one that's freshest in my mind, and I'd say that it is A View from the Top of the World. I do think that Dream Theater has improved since they took on Mike Mangini. I think Mangini started off with the band maybe a little bit rocky, and then things kind of picked up a little bit. But I don't know. I just don't. I haven't felt A View from the Top of the World yet. And a lot of the same criticisms of the self-titled kind of go with this. Like, there's not really a lot of particularly effective moments. Like, The Alien's a good single, but I don't know. Invisible Monster, it's kind of meh. It's kind of just meh. And the epic, I mean, it just feels like a longer version of Pale Blue Dot. So, it's kind of it's good for what it tries to do, but I don't think I'd rank it among the classics of their discography. Alright, and I think the last one that I'm gonna put in this bottom row, I have to go with When Dream and Day Unite. And I'm gonna actually just say, like, I have a real soft spot for this record. I think this record is way better than people imagine it to be. And having Charlie Dominici on vocals does kind of put it in its own sort of category. And I mean, there are musical differences too. Like, it's not quite as progressive. You can really tell that they're still incorporating a lot of those, early Queensryche and Iron Maiden influences before they really kind of broke through with Images and Words and really just sounded like Rush on steroids. But, it's a special album for what it is and for what it represents. It's the first official Dream Theater record. And, yeah, I think it's good for that, but would it be the first album I'd recommend to a Dream Theater listener? No. Not even close. Okay, this one's going to be a little bit of a shocker to some. And yeah, because this is an album that's pretty well liked in the community. But I never really got on with it, and that is A Dramatic Turn of Events. So, A Dramatic Turn of Events, I mean, there is one song on this that I really, really love, and that's Breaking All Illusions. I will raise a glass to that song any day of the week. But the rest of the record, I don't know, I just never got on with it. Like, Outcry, Bridges in the Sky, they're okay, I guess. There's nothing wrong with them. I just never really, fell into those tracks, and I think Beneath the Surface is kind of a crap tune. And, maybe I'll do a video on this in the future, but On the Backs of Angels is literally Pull Me Under. And I mean, I will do a video on this. I will explain my position on why those two songs are exactly identical. And, I can pull out, charts and sheet music, and I can prove it. I have the receipts. So, that kind of colored my opinion of that album. Alright, so next, we're still in the Mangini era, and I'm gonna rank Distance Over Time as probably the best Mangini era record. And I think the reason for it is that they really hit a sweet spot on this record. Good singles, like, I mean, Untethered Angel, which starts the record, fantastic. Fall Into the Light's probably the best mix of that, like, 80s Metallica sound with Dream Theater that I can think of. And, you know, Paralyze is okay. It's kind of like what I think of some other songs in their discography, which I'll get into later. Maybe a little slightly improved. But yeah, I mean, it's a good album. I think you have some really good tracks on there, like Barstool Warrior, S2N, Pale Blue Dot. At Wit's End is a real banger. I really think Out of Reach is actually a really good song. Like, it kind of reminds me a bit of something that belonged on Awake. Alright, so we finally leave the Mangini era and the Dominici era and into the sort of classic lineup minus the keyboardists who revolve. And I'm gonna go with an album that kind of ranks as their cheesiest, Black Clouds and Silver Linings. There's a lot of stuff on this album I really like. I mean, A Nightmare to Remember has some pretty killer moments. The Count of Tuscany, if you take the lyrics off of it, it's a great tune. You add the lyrics and it's like, what are we listening to? What is this mess? Wither, not a good song. Rite of Passage is fun because it has an iPhone solo. It literally says in the sheet music, iPhone solo. I'm not joking. iPhone solo. And I don't know, maybe the weirdest thing is that the best song on this record is literally made up of bits of other songs. I'm talking about The Shattered Fortress. You know, it caps off the whole 12-step suite. Yeah, I think it's a serviceable album. I think this is like, if it was one of the first Dream Theater albums you listened to, you could do worse. But it's still not great enough that it still belongs in my mid category. Okay, the next one is going to surprise a lot of you, and it's going to be the most controversial. Well, I don't know, actually. It's going to be one of the most controversial rankings that I could do for a Dream Theater tier list, and that is Octavarium. Yeah, I know. This is one of the band's best-selling, most popular, most definitive Dream Theater records. I get it. I really get it. It's that title track, you know? The title track is 24 minutes of orgasmic perfection. If the title track were a single on its own, it'd be up here. But let me explain this, okay? The rest of the album has the highest concentration of Dream Theater songs I hate of any other Dream Theater record. I would not shed a single tear if These Walls, I Walk Beside You, and Never Enough were nuked from existence, never to be heard by any other human being again. I would not shed a single tear. I could even say The Answer Lies Within kind of falls within this, so you're left with 3 other decent tracks. Root of All Evil. Sounds like a WWF, or WWE, or whatever wrestling is nowadays, walk-in theme. Panic Attack is probably the second best track on the album. And Sacrifice Sons is kind of like something from Black Clouds and Silver Linings. Like, it's so cheesy. It's good, but it's cheesy. So, you have an incredible peak with the closing title track. Just 24 minutes of some of the most perfect music ever made by any band, any artist, of any genre, of all time. And 7 songs that are somewhere between truly awful and just kind of mid. This is as high as it is because of the weight of the title track. If you remove the title track from this would be lower than The Astonishing for me. Or maybe between The Astonishing and the self-titled. But yeah, I really do not care for Octavarium as an album. As a song, it's brilliant. It is perfect. The album sucks. So, now we're into the realm of the albums from Dream Theater that I consider good. Like, these are maybe not going to be classics, but they are going to be highly respected, highly beloved albums. And I gotta start with Systematic Chaos. Systematic Chaos almost actually, you know what, yeah, it belongs in mid. Because there are still a few moments on this record that I'm just not hot on, like Prophets of War and Forsaken are just kind of, eh. But then you've got In the Presence of Enemies, Ministry of Lost Souls. Those are great tracks. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot what else was on the album. I have to go look this up. Repentance. That was the track I was thinking of. I didn't even get to the looking it up part yet. Still got it, Travis. Oh. But yeah, Repentance is another just amazing track. Probably one of the slickest Petrucci solos. You know what? I rescind that. It's going in good. There's really only 2 valleys with Prophets of War and Forsaken. And I don't even really begrudge the band for that. Like, they're not the worst songs in Dream Theater's discography. And there are some good moments throughout the record. So, hey, it goes in the good category. Alright, next up, this is an album that I'm actually shocked at where I put it over Octavarium, because there was a long while where I probably would have said I didn't like this album as much as Octavarium, and that's Train of Thought. So the thing with Train of Thought is it's an album I have to be in a particular mood for. If I'm in the right mood for it, it's up here. But on a normal day, it's floating around this general vicinity. And it's just because of the overall heavier nature of the record, you know? I don't exclusively listen to Dream Theater for chunky 7-string riffs and drop C and metal. You know, I like that they have a balance. I like that there's a synergy between the progressive and the metal elements. And Train of Thought gives me too much of the metal element at the expense of the prog element. That being said, when I'm in the mood for it, it hits perfectly. And, you know, there aren't any bad tracks on it. Even some of the ones that maybe could make an average person cringe a little more, like As I Am or Honor Thy Father, I think those are smashing songs. So interestingly, the one that's going on the list next is an album that presents the opposite, and that's Falling into Infinity. I like it better than Train of Thought because I've sat with it longer. I've had it in my ears for longer than Train of Thought. And I think that it has some higher peaks, like Trial of Tears, Lines in the Sand, New Millennium, Peruvian Skies. Yeah, there's so much great material on that record. And I think that this album's kind of taken a lot of flack for being, you know, mainstream friendly and pop rather than prog metal. And I think it's true that the metal elements really are missing from this record, but that's part of what I like about it. I like prog rock, and it doesn't have to be heavy for me to enjoy it. And this album kind of proves that Dream Theater is very capable of doing just good, solid rock music. It helps that Derek Sherinian is kind of a rock god in his own right, having played with artists like Kiss, and yeah, no complaints here. So, we got one more album to put in the good category, and I think I'm going to go with Awake. Now, Awake was kind of the album that introduced me to the idea of the 7-string guitar. For those who don't know, I am a musician myself, and I predominantly play guitar, usually ones with too many strings. I love playing 7-string guitar. When I bought my first 7-string, the very first riff I played on it was not from Awake, it was A Change of Seasons. But I also played The Mirror. I also played Lie. I also did the opening from Caught in a Web. And yeah, there's just so much great material on Awake. I almost want to put it a category above, but those are reserved for the band's true masterpieces. The ones that are going to be remembered in 100 years as this was the defining moment for progressive metal, and just ones that I like better. So, yeah, Awake, really brilliant album. I don't think there's a bad moment on it, really. Like, there isn't a moment where I go, oh, turn this off. Some of the songs on this have inspired some of my own compositions as well. Like, for anybody who knows me personally and remembers a song called Eye of the Universe, I ripped off that delay effect from Lifting Shadows off a Dream. Alright, so now we get into their best. We get into the top category. These are the albums that are going to be in the history books for Dream Theater, as far as I'm concerned. And of these three, and remember, this is a personal ranking. Okay? Before y'all go attacking me in the comments saying, oh, you didn't put my favorite album at number 1. This is my ranking. Your rankings will be different. I know, because some of you have put Octavarium way higher than I ever would, and some of you have put Systematic Chaos way lower than I ever would. I don't know what's wrong with you, but those are your lists. This is mine. Third best Dream Theater album, Images and Words. And I think this is the true Dream Theater debut. This is, you can ignore, just ignore When Dream and Day Unite. Pretend it doesn't exist. Spotify has for years. The real debut is Images and Words. And it is a true masterpiece from beginning to end. From the very first low E of Pull Me Under to the very last high E of Learning to Live, it's a masterpiece. Every song just is better than the last. And by the time it's over, you are left in this, like, wow, what did I just listen to quandary? Like, it's brilliant. It's brilliance from beginning to end. And it's only in third place because there are 2 albums I think smash it. If these 2 albums didn't exist, Images and Words would be my favorite album of all time. Okay, so I alluded when I was talking about Octavarium that there would be some more controversy. That's right. I'm gonna look you in the face and say Scenes from a Memory is not my number one Dream Theater album. But it's goddamn close. It is so close to being number one. And it is objectively the better Dream Theater album than my number one pick. But I like my number one pick more. So, what can I say about Scenes from a Memory? It's perfect. It's literal perfection from beginning to end. I would recommend this album to a fan of music. If you like musicians playing notes and singers singing lyrics, you have to listen to this album. It is probably one of the greatest progressive rock concept albums ever made. The songs are perfect. The musicianship is mind-blowing. It's fun. It's dark. It's even mainstream-ish. Like, you could listen to a couple of these songs and go, why haven't I heard this on the radio? It's great. It is such a brilliant record, and it encapsulates everything good about Dream Theater in one record. And the best thing is that for a prog metal record, like, you think of prog metal and you think of, like, 30-minute songs that have, like, half of it taken up by solos, and it's just a bunch of musicians noodling about nothing. And that isn't the case with this one. Like, outside of maybe Home and Beyond This Life, which both have incredibly long instrumental sections, and then The Dance of Eternity, which is just its own big instrumental, although that one's, like, very structured and very, like, composed. But outside of those moments, this is a very vocal-led, songwriting-driven album. The songs are fairly concise. The solos are just kind of compact little bits in the middle of the song, like you would expect in any typical rock record. The time signature changes, with the exception of The Dance of Eternity, are tasteful. This is an album that you don't need to be a maths GSE or whatever to understand and appreciate. You can listen to this record not knowing a goddamn thing about prog metal and enjoy it. And that's one of the reasons why I think this is going to be a classic. Years and years and years from now, people are still going to talk about Scenes from a Memory. But I still think 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence is better. It was the album through which I discovered Dream Theater. The Glass Prison was the first Dream Theater song I ever heard. And I think that why I like it better is because it's kind of two albums, really. Like, you have the first disc. Like, it's a double album, which means it should be kind of like The Astonishing, but it is nothing like The Astonishing. The first disc is kind of an album unto itself. You have 5 completely disconnected songs, and they're great songs. I mean, some of them are very underrated Dream Theater songs. Like, hardly anyone talks about Disappear, and it's one of the most haunting songs in Dream Theater's entire collection. And then you've got, The Glass Prison, the genesis of the whole 12-step suite. One of the just, like, best examples of Dream Theater going full balls to the wall heavy. Blind Faith, Misunderstood, really good, competent prog metal tunes. The Great Debate is probably one of the few examples of, like, a strong political message in a Dream Theater song that doesn't feel like it's trying to kick you in the face with its information. It's like, here are both sides of the argument. It's up to you to decide what you think is right. I like that. I enjoy that approach. And then you've got Disc 2, which is like a miniature Scenes from a Memory. A sprawling 42-minute concept about mental health and mental illness and how we need to be compassionate to one another and that we need to understand one another instead of shun one another. And it's a message that's incredibly dear to my heart. And I think when you couple it with these great passages of music, and I mean, like, on the same level as 6 Degrees, in my opinion. You get an album that's pure brilliance, but brilliant in a way that's kind of under the radar compared to Scenes from a Memory, which, everybody and their brother talks about as being the best Dream Theater album. But I think if you really look at 6 Degrees, I said 6 Degrees before, I meant Scenes from a Memory. But if you really look at 6 Degrees, it's just as good of a record as Scenes. And in my opinion, maybe edged a little bit better just because I have more of a personal affinity towards it. In fact, I have such an affinity towards it that I own it on vinyl, CD, cassette. There is a cassette version and it's missing material. And I own the official guitar tablature book for it. So it's the album that I own on the most physical formats. So, yeah, that's my Dream Theater album ranking. So just to recap what order this all goes in: The Astonishing, self-titled, View from the Top of the World, When Dream and Day Unite, Dramatic Turn of Events, Distance Over Time, Black Clouds and Silver Linings, Octavarium, Systematic Chaos, Train of Thought, Falling into Infinity, Awake, Images and Words, Scenes from a Memory, and then 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. Just in case you were wondering how this would fit into how I rank those records. So there you go. That's my Dream Theater album ranking. Take care, everyone, and we will see you in the next one.